Good evening. Hope you all are well. We are going through a bad time, so now I do not have any other options but to give you either an audio lecture or a video lecture so that you may benefit a bit from whatever I am been teaching. So today I have taken up the superannuated man, and I am going to give you a little bit of you can say Wikipedia material, my own explanations, and I hope you will benefit from it. First of all, please type in Google the superannuated man text. Then you will be seeing that a Google document will be opening, and in that you will be having the text, the superannuated man. I have made my I have actually arranged my lecture by writing the meaning, and as also my I'm giving you the meaning, taking the each para. Apart from that, I will be also telling you a little bit of the background of the superannuated man and the source, which is called the Essays of Elia. You will be seeing that in the title you have the Elia and the last essays of Elia. Now, who is Elia? Elia is a pseudonym used by Charles Lamb. It is a collection of essays written by Lamb. It was first published in the book form in 1823. The second volume was the last, which is the last essays of Elia, which was issued in 1833 by the publisher Edward Moxon. Edward Moxon, M-O-X-O-N. The essays became very popular, and many people used to read these essays weekly. The main importance of the essays are the personal and the conversational tone that Lamb has been using. Two essays we have in our syllabus. One is the Dream Children, another is the superannuated man. Now, Lamb, I told you, is Elia here. We are not dealing with Dream Children at present. We are dealing with the superannuated man. But in Dream Children, you will be having the name Cousin Bridget. Who is Cousin Bridget? Cousin Bridget is Sister Mary, or the sister of Charles Lamb. So these are the two important things that you have to know, that Lamb used the pseudonym Elia, and Cousin Bridget, which appears in the Dream Children, is actually referring to Sister Mary. Okay, now coming to the main text. What do you mean by superannuated? Okay. Superannuated means, there are three meanings. Let's take. First meaning is old-fashioned. The second meaning is a monthly payment made to someone who is retired from work. The third meaning is a regular payment to a person that is intended to allow them to subsist without working. If we take these three, old-fashioned, monthly payment made to someone who is retired from work, a regular payment to a person that is intended to allow them to subsist without working, we have to read the text in order to understand which one of this belongs to the present speaker. Old-fashioned, you can take it as old-fashioned, it is applicable, but here superannuation means the pension which the speaker is going to receive from the firm where he worked, which is the 2/3 of his salary every month. Now let's go back to the text, and please look at para number 1. Para number 1, you have Lamb, or the speaker. It is an autobiographical essay, that's why I am mentioning Lamb. He is talking about his confinement in the office he's working. The confinement, he has been using the word Irksome confinement. Irksome means irritating and confinement means captivity. You can actually compare it with our state today, because we are also in captivity and it is quite irritating. I do not know if you are getting pleasure out of it, but at least after some time it is really troublesome and irritating, because you are actually in a bond. You do not have the freedom and you feel that you are bound up. The next is the word he's been using. He's saying that I have been in an irksome confinement of an office, and he compares his office to prison. And he says that his prison days are prolonged through middle age down to decrepitude. What does decrepitude means? Decrepitude means the fact of being in a very bad condition. I've made some notes. I'm looking into the notes and telling you that he is in a very bad condition, and this prison days he knows is going to end up with the end of his life, means nearly the end of his life, means up to his retirement. So he's saying, he's used words like he's going to pass through middle ages, then he is going to come to, then he'll be having his silver hairs, then he will be retiring. So now he has forgotten sensations which are called holidays, which he used to enjoy during his childhood, which has become a memory nowadays. In the second para, he is talking about his 36 years in his office, which is in Mincing Lane. Mincing Lane is the place where his office is situated. He is actually associating Mincing Lane with melancholy. Melancholy is the present disposition he is in, and he says that he is forced to work here at least 8 to 9 to 10 hours. Now he has made a simile comparison, and that is with wild animals in a cage. He feels that there is no very less vacations, and is almost 10 hours attendance in the counting house, in the accounts office where he's working, and he's compared himself to wild animals in cages. In the third paragraph, he says that okay, at least he has his Sundays to himself. But what are these Sundays? Sundays he has to go to the church. Church is not a matter of pleasure. Church is associated with religion, and religion, according to him, actually forces you to do something which you are sometimes very unwilling. He feels that he has to go to the church every Sunday. He's very reluctant to do that, and the Sunday does not give him any pleasure, because there is no busy life which is in London, which he enjoys during the weekdays. All the shops are closed. Sundays means an obligation. Sunday, he laments, shops are being closed. And what does he see? He sees the knacks. Knacks means the skilled and the unskilled workers. They are also attending church, and they are also moving with a very somber and a very melancholic face, because to them this one day, you can say one day holiday is of no importance, because after this, after Sunday they have to go back to work. So he feels that looking at these apprentices, looking at the maids who are going to church, does not give him pleasure. The pleasure would have been present if the shops were open, if he could move around every place which he liked. But Sundays means all the shops are closed and he has to go to church, which is also a matter of, which is a matter, you can say, which is a matter of obligation. I can use this word obligation for him. Next paragraph. Which is he talks about, which is the next paragraph, where he talks about Easter, which is fourth para. He says there are 3 holidays he has. One is Easter, another is Christmas, and 1 full week in the summer where he goes to his country house in Hertfordshire. But the 7 days where he's going for a holiday, he has that same feeling that he has to go back to work. So he says that continuously is very tense. The 7 days are very tense. He uses lines like 7 uneasy days, restless pursuit for pleasure. You know, when we have little holidays, we try to make the most out of them. That's why we hardly enjoy those holidays, because we want to do lots of things in a small span of time. That is what is happening over here also. He also wants to do a lot of things in that 7 days, and before he has a taste of the beauty of the things, everything has vanished. The 7 days has lapsed and he has to go back to work again. Okay. Now he talks about, bear with me please. Now he talks about the 51 tedious weeks which will be intervening between the 7 days of holiday which will be getting in summer. And then he talks of thraldom. What does thraldom means? Thraldom means a state of subjugation to a master. So he feels that he's a slave, and the master, who is the omnipotent, what would I use the word? Not really omnipotent, I would be using the better word, which will be the, here you can use the word the tyrant over here. The tyrant is waiting here to actually put him back to work. So he's a slave here, and the tyrant is waiting for him for the 7 days to finish, and the slave to come back to work again. So here he's talking about slavery, and here he's talking about the tyrant. In the next para, which is the 5th para, he's talking about the rigors of attendance, and also he's talking about his own incapacity of business. Here we can feel that he is not very sure of himself. He's continuously questioning his capacity of working, and he's saying that the thought that he is incapable is taking a toll on his health, and his good spirits are also flagging. I had perpetually a dread of some crisis to which I found unequal. He finds that he is unable to make you can say correct entries, and he's going to make mistakes, and at night he's haunted by these nightmares that he's made mistakes, and he can't sleep. So he says in the daytime he's serving as a slave, and in the night also he's a slave to all these nightmares. So he feels is continuously uncomfortable in this world, and he's never at ease. His spirits are never at ease. I am 50 years of age, and the prospect of emancipation is not there anymore. I had grown to my desk, and the wood had entered into my soul. Means has become an inanimate object, devoid of any kind of emotion. He is comparing himself to wood. He is comparing himself to any inanimate object who are incapable of exhibiting any kind of emotions. Next he says that his colleagues are also very anxious about him, and he says his colleagues are noticing that his health is actually he is affecting, and his also the junior partners, he doesn't name the partner. This is one of you can say Blake style. He uses L, junior partner, and this junior partner calls him and asks him about his infirmity, and he feels that maybe they will tell him to resign. Then on a particular day, he mentions that day, that is 12th of April, just before 8 o'clock, he is called by L and B, who are the partners of his firm, and they are questioning him of the length of his service, the property he holds, his meritorious records. And after all the harangue, he uses the word harangue, which is a lengthy and aggressive speech. After all this harangue, he's been given a proposal that from that day means that the next day he can retire voluntary, which we call the VRS, the voluntary retirement scheme, and he would be getting 2/3 of his salary, 2/3 of his salary, which he feels is a great benevolent gesture from his employers because of the service that he had provided to his firm these previous years. Now he feels very happy, and he, at the end of the para, he mentions the firm and the employers, the name of the employers, who are Boldero, Merriweather, Bosanquet, and Lacey. The meanings over here are descant. Descant means a discourse on a theme. Expediency. Expediency is a practical proposition, though improper. Harangue, I had already said, a lengthy and aggressive speech. And the last, he ends with a Latin phrase in this para, esto perpetua, let it be perpetual. Means now he has been given a proposition in which he can retire, or a voluntary retirement scheme, but he will be given a benevolent sum, which is 2/3 of his salary as pension. Now, next para, which is para number 7. For the first 2 days, he feels stunned. Then he compares himself to be like the prisoner who out of the Bastille. Bastille is the prison where you must have, I don't know if you have history, there you have the French Revolution, and during the French Revolution the prisoner was set free. So he feels like the prisoners who has been set free after 40 years of confinement. Then he says that it was like passing out of time into eternity, for it is a sort of eternity for a man to have his time all to myself. Now he has all time for himself. He is a man who has been poor man, a poor in time. Now he has all the times to himself. That's why the time is in capital letters, which is so important for him. He can't really be more pleased than this. He uses phrases like giddy raptures, and when this happiness, when he's so ecstatic about all this, when this had subsided, now he notices that somewhat he had grown old, because when he was working he would walk 30 miles a day. Now he cannot walk so much. Maybe because he has so much of time. Is he not eager to do so, or does he not have that you can say strength to do so? And he says that when he had so much less time, he would wear out his eyes trying to read, but nowadays he doesn't even read. So what has happened to all the pleasures that he had when he had such less time? He used to make the most out of time. Now he has so much time, yet he does not make most out of it. The next para, which is the 8th para, eighth para is like a calculation. He says that he had lived 50 years. That means he's 50 years of age. But he feels this 50 years is hardly the years that he has lived for himself, because this 50 years he's lived for other people and not for himself. And still, if he calculates the little bit of years he's lived for himself, that means maybe 20 years he's lived for himself, 15 years he's lived for himself, then he's a young fellow. So where has the time gone? The rest of the time, 50 minus 15 maybe, let's take it, 35 years he's given to other people. Now this 15 years he had given to himself. And now he has got the rest of his life. He's calculating the rest of his time. He wants to make threefolds. Maybe he has 3 years to live. Threefold means he wants to three times of threefold is 9 years. That 3 years must be in the 9 years of living. So he had been an accountant. Now he is also trying to calculate the time he has left for himself to enjoy. In the 9th para, he is talking. He says that one day after retiring from the counting house, he goes back. And when he goes back, he sees that he has become very distant, and it does not seem like an affair of yesterday. The partners and the clerks with whom he had spent so many years and seemed so much removed from him, they seemed so dead. So he feels, he speaks about a poem, a tragedy by Robert Howard, where Robert Howard is speaking about the death of the friend, which has been just sometimes before, but he feels the death of a friend is like the time has passed into eternity. He also feels that his retirement is something eternal. It's been a long time. So in order to dissipate that feeling, in the 10th para, he goes back to his counting house, and he feels that there is a feeling which he used, that the awkward. He feels a very awkward feeling, and he compares himself with a bird. That's why he uses co-brethren of the quill. Co-brethren means brothers of the same feather. And now he goes back, and he does not feel that pleasant familiarity. Everything seems very, you can say, superficial. They are joking. His colleagues are joking with him. His employers are cracking jokes about the hard time he had spent in the office. But everything seemed to be very superficial or artificial to him. He looks at the peg where he used to hang his coat. That also he is now given to somebody else who has taken his place. And everything is now out of his hand. His friends, his employers, his desk, the peg are not his. They are somebody else's. So now he has a feeling. He feels, why am I missing the pleasant familiarity? And when they are talking about the rugged road that he had led in his office, was he really a coward to quit that rugged road? He's questioning himself. He's actually very skeptical whether he's done a right thing or not. He uses the line, I had violently broken the bands betwixt us. They say, so there are words like, the meaning in this para are conundrums, confusing, or different, confusing, a confusion or a difficult problem or a question. And he uses a word which is very important over here. Just 1 second. Okay, he uses the word smote. He seems that familiarity which is not here, that superficiality is striking him in his heart. That's why I use the word smote, S-M-O-T-E, which means striking him hard. Now he's talking about his colleagues. He doesn't mention the name. Again, the style of Lamb. He farewell CH, dry. That is the characteristics of CH, who is his friend. Then he talks about PL. PL is officious to do. PL means he doesn't give the full name of his friend, and etc. etc. He bids farewell to everyone. He says the mansion also, which is the Mincing Lane office, He says it's a big mansion. It could be the house of a Gresham or a Whittington. Who is a Gresham? Gresham is a name, either it's a name from a place in Norfolk, but here it can mean an English financier who founded the Royal Exchange in London. So I'll go for the second. It's an English financier who founded the Royal Exchange in London. Whittington, Richard Whittington, who was an English merchant and a politician of the late medieval period. He feels the mansion is so huge that it could be the house of either a Gresham or a Whittington. Now he looks at his files from his colleagues, from his employers, from the mansion. Now he goes back to his file. He says these files are piling up. They are piling up so much that he compares himself with Thomas Aquinas. He was an Italian Dominican friar, a philosopher, theologian, jurist. He was known for notes and notes and notes, and he compares the files and he compares himself to Thomas Aquinas because he has left behind so many files and documents in his office, and he talks about that and he calls them, within double inverted commas, my works. His works are not his writings. Yes, writings not, you can say, creations. Writings are the accounts that he had made and the files which he had corrected. So he calls them his works, which is leaving behind, like Thomas Aquinas had left behind his work. Okay. Next, we are coming to the page. This is the next. Now 15 days had passed, next para, where he says, 15 days had passed since the day of my first communication. At that period, I was approaching my tranquility. Now he's become much more calm. But he had not reached that calm, which you can say the saints had reached. But it was quite comparable to that kind of calmness. He became somewhat very unsteady. He is not accustomed to this kind of tranquility, but he's trying to adjust to this tranquility. He uses the word, I missed my old chains. It was like a necessary part of my apparel. What do you mean necessary part? Means like you can say you wear a watch or I wear spectacles. It's a necessary part of my apparel. So he feels that the chains which had bound him up so long, the chains of captivity where he had been a slave, he missed that slavery, he missed that captivity. And he feels like a Carthusian. Who is a Carthusian? A monk or a nun of an austere contemplative order founded by Saint Bruno in 1084. He feels like a Carthusian. He was from strict cellular discipline, suddenly by revolution returned upon the world. Means now he's come back to the world. He had been like a saint, a Carthusian in a cell. Now he's been let loose. Twice he's using that two images. One is Bastille, another is a Carthusian image where he's out of captivity. He is now master of his time. It is natural to go wherever he wants. He goes to Soho. He goes to the book-stalls in Soho. He goes to Bond Street. He had been 30 years a collector. So there is nothing strange. Now he feels, now he is as if looking at the pictures in a busy street in London, and he's as if he's a collector going there to look at the collections out there, and his image has changed. He had been a collector in a accounts office. Now he's a collector where he's looking at the collections in the road, and he is actually you can say spending his time, most of the time, looking at all the things which are displayed in the busy London street. And he uses names of some of the London streets like Fish Street Hill. He feels Fish Street Hill is a busy street bustling with shops and traffic. It's a busy street in London. Then was it ever otherwise? What is become of Fish Street Hill? What does he mean by that? Means why is he not having the same feeling when he's visiting Fish Street Hill? That is when he visited before, and when before his retirement, and when he's visiting after his retirement. What has become of Fenchurch Street? What is Fenchurch Street? Central London railway terminus. What has become of Mincing Lane? What Mincing Lane is the place where he used to work, which links Fenchurch Street to Great Tower Street, and it is also famous for tea and spice trade. Then he talks of Pall Mall. Pall Mall is a street in the St. James area of the city of Westminster, central London. It connects St. James Street to Trafalgar Square. You must have seen Trafalgar Square. You must have seen Trafalgar Square in the cinema or in the books, where you have lots of pigeons are you can see lots of pigeons out there. So it's a busy place where all the travelers, all the people of London go and spend their time sitting, chatting. You can just idling their time out there. So he talks about that Pall Mall. Now he feels that these places, Fish Street Hill, Fenchurch Street, Mincing Lane, Pall Mall, these seem so different. He does not have the same feeling when he's visiting. It is change time. Change is in London, near the Buckingham Palace, you have the change of guards. It's a wonderful, you can see, thing to see. All over travelers go there to see the change of guards. When one group of guards are going and another group of guards are coming in front of the Buckingham Palace, it is called the change time. Nothing is actually giving him pleasure. So he felt like it is no hyperbole. I mean, he's not exaggerating. When I am venturing to compare the change in my condition to passing into another world, he feels now he's into another world. One world was his time he spent in Mincing Lane, and another world was the time he spent after his superannuation. Time stands in a manner to me. I have lost all distinction of season. I do not know the day of the week or the month. Every day is the same to him, whether it's a Sabbath, whether it's a Ethiop White, Black Monday, everything is same to him. Sabbath is a day of religious observance and abstinence from work. Ethiop White is come from a fable. It is about a black slave who actually used to wash his blackness because he felt inferior in front of his employer. So he compares himself to an Ethiop White, where he used to feel inferior in front of his employers, and he uses the words Ethiop White over here, where he wants to wash off all his inferiority. Black Monday is Easter Monday. Easter Monday is just after Easter Sunday, when Christ had risen after his crucifixion. All days are the same. Sunday itself, the unfortunate failure of a holiday, is too often proved with what sense of its fugitiveness and over care to get the greatest quantity of pleasure out of it is melted down into a weekday. Sunday was an important day for him, where he used to make the most out of time, but that also has become a weekday to him. Now he has lots of time. He can visit a sick friend. He can go to anybody's invitation whenever he wants. So he says that it is Lucretian pleasure. Lucretian means a spectator who is standing on shore and watching a shipwreck. So he is comparing himself to a spectator, and to his other colleagues who are working, who are undergoing a shipwreck because they are slogging and working while he is enjoying his time. So he says he is on the shore and enjoying the shipwreck which is happening in front of him. But actually, is the shipwreck providing him any kind of enjoyment? It is not. So he calls it a Lucretian pleasure, to behold the poor drudges whom I had left behind in the world, carking and caring. Carking means carrying on the burden, and caring like horses in a mill. Again a simile. trudging on the same eternal round. And what is it all for? A man. Now he comes to the realization, okay, these people are slogging, these people are working, but for what? They are actually working for pleasure. They are working for leisure, pleasure and leisure. Time to himself, not too little to do. Had I a, then he says, if I had a little son, this is one, style of Lamb. Even in Dream Children, a Reverie talks about a make-believe son. He says, if I had had a son, I would Christian him nothing to do, or name him nothing to do. He should do nothing. Why do we have to do something? This is his realization, contemplation. Man, I verily will, is out of his element as long as he's operative. As long as he's operative, he's not a man. When he is back to his element, he's a man. That is, he is contemplative. Then he can think about his existence. Will no kindly earthquake come and swallow up these accursed cotton mills where people have to go to work? All this work should end, and all the people should have all the time for himself. I am no longer, he again gives dash dash dash, clerk to the firm. He now uses a personification, personifies, I am retired leisure. I can be seen. He is like, universalization. Lamb has universalized him. He is now retired leisure. He is to be met in trim gardens. Everybody can see him in gardens. You see people idling in gardens. I already come to be known by my vacant face. He's become vacant. His careless gesture, moving, perambulating means moving at no fixed pace. He does not have any fixed destination to go, nor with any settled purpose. I walk about, not to and from, means it's not going to office and coming back from office. They tell me a certain calm digitant air. Calm digitant air means leisure with dignity. That has buried so long with my other good paths, means leisure with dignity. That has been buried so long with my other good parts. Everything has been buried. He has all the time. He has made so much of contemplation that people should have time for himself. Yet he is no longer what he used to be. Everything has been buried now. I grow into gentility, a social superiority, perceptively, which is recognizable. Perceptible means recognizable. He is growing up. When I take up the newspaper, it is to read the state of the opera. Opus operant. Opus operatum means the efficacy of an action. He's reading the state of an opera, means there is no reason, no purpose which he's reading for. He's reading because he wants to read, because it is the pleasure of reading. That is art for art's sake. Again, I sing without any specific purpose. I have done all that I came into the world to do. I have worked, task work. Worked means not the work he wanted to do. Task work. He uses the word task, which is the work which has been assigned to him, and have the rest of the day to myself. He ends the essay with the saying, now he has everything to himself. The rest of the day, he has done his bit in his life, and he has the rest of the day to himself. Please read up the essay. After you read up the essay, you will, I tell you, you have to look up Google, and you have to type the superannuated man text. You will be having the Google document coming up. It's in PDF. Read up. Then you after reading up, you compare my lecture with it. If you have any problem, you note down the questions, and then you place it tomorrow. If you cannot place it tomorrow, the rest of the days, we have all the day to ourselves. We do not know when we are going to go back to work. I also feel that I am like Lamb now, without any specific purpose, not really enjoying my captivity over here, because captivity is not really a thing to be enjoyed, but still making the most of it, and I hope you also will make the most of it. Thank you.